You are on Drive on 891 ABC Adelaide. And as I say, a long-awaited response to an inquiry that called for a gambling advertising ban was tabled on Budget Day yesterday. One of the accusations around that has been made is that the government was trying to bury the document, given a lot of attention was on the budget. The official government response outlines a package of gambling reforms announced by the Prime Minister, but it doesn't include some other key recommendations that had been made. Anna Bardsley is co-founder of the not-for-profit group Gambling Harm Lived Experience Experts. Anna, thank you for your time this afternoon.
Oh, thanks, Nikolai. Thanks for having me.
Can you remind us of what brought this inquiry on in the first place?
Well, it was a bipartisan inquiry with all parties in Parliament participating, and they looked at the harms of online gambling, and because we are in Australia, we are the biggest losers in the world, which means per capita we lose more than any other country in the world, and that number is only rising. It's not going down in any way, shape or form. We have more gambling advertising, we have more access to gambling than any other country in the world allows. And the results of that inquiry, the members of the committee were unanimous in their findings. They came away from it saying, with 31 recommendations, saying something needs to change here in Australia. And there were several that were really important. Gambling advertising was one of them, because we know that gambling advertising is a way that you normalise something and you make it just a part of life. And gambling advertising was telling our children and our toddlers even that gambling and sport and gambling in life is a normal part of life, and that's not what we want. One of the other recommendations was that we needed a national regulator. At the moment, it's companies are regulated ad hoc, most of them in the Northern Territory in a weird kind of way by an organisation, a commissioner that doesn't have any full-time staff, and they only meet once a month. So companies are getting away with, I would call it blue murder.
So what will change as a result of this inquiry?
Can I say not much? Yet?
You can.
Not much yet.
Why do you believe that's the case?
Because what's been announced recently is what should have been announced at the time that it was launched. And Mr. Albanese promised Peter Murphy, who was the chair of that committee, who has since died, that he would make sure that her legacy was put forward and seen through. And the proposal from the committee was that it be a phased-in ban of all gambling advertising and sponsorships. It was never meant to happen immediately and overnight. It was meant to be phased in so that everybody who had any involvement in it could find other ways to get income and other ways to handle that stuff, and it hasn't happened.
Okay, so just to be clear for people that aren't familiar, that is one recommendation that's not been taken up by government as a result of this.
They have only just started this. What they announced was some modifications to what they would allow, but it's only the beginning. It's not enough. There was no ongoing looking at whether what the next stage of that would be, because in the end, what was recommended was in the end a total ban on gambling ads.
But is it right to say that there will be a further restriction on what people will see on TV and radio, and I think even on players' Guernseys as well, if they're on the sporting field?
From what's been announced, yes, there will be some restrictions on that, which is a good thing, but it's only a start.
Is it enough to make a difference, do you think?
Hopefully, but it's only a start.
What else would you have liked to see come in place? Obviously, it appears that you want to see the advertising phased out overall. Are there other mechanisms? Yes. You mentioned the regulator.
The regulator, we'd like to see an independent national regulator with teeth that can say when gambling companies, behave in a way that's not for consumer protection, that they are then that they're punished isn't quite the right word, but held accountable for their behaviour. And we'd like to see all inducements for gambling to be gone. They are a really bad, diabolical, nasty way that people get hooked on gambling and end up in a lot of trouble.
4 is the time. You're on Drive on 891 ABC Adelaide, hearing from Anna Bardsley, the co-founder of the not-for-profit group Gambling Harm Lived Experience Experts. You mentioned that idea of your preference would be to see gambling advertising phased out over time, and you kind of touched on the finances of that, because I'm sure one of the counterpoints that is put forward is that in a lot of instances the reality of some professional sporting leagues that we see at the moment is that a fair portion of their advertising that they can then use to pay players and keep the league going comes from gambling. And if you remove that, that could leave the future of those kinds of codes in strife.
But we've heard this before, Nikolai. We heard it when tobacco banning of sponsorship and advertising was proposed. The sky is falling. Sporting codes won't survive, especially grassroots ones, and it didn't happen. They found other ways to support their clubs and their codes. And there has to be a better way to do it than buy such a dangerous product as gambling, because it's costing lives. People are dying.
Do you see it as progress? And you mentioned that idea of advertising for smoking being phased out. Could this be part of a longer term step towards what you would like to see come into place?
That's what we would like to see. We'd like to see a plan that looks at the next 3 to 5 years, whatever, and an actual plan that says this is how it's going to happen. And at the moment, that's not been announced.
Well, I was just about to say, yeah, is the other side of that coin, I guess, a concern that if that was going to happen, there's an argument it would have been as part of the response to this inquiry, and that there's a potential at least that it may be said, well, this has now been addressed, let's move on.
Exactly, and I think that's why it was why it was tabled on Budget Day, so that it would hopefully go away. It's not going to go away. We won't let it go away, because people are still being harmed, incredibly harmed by gambling. People are living in poverty, and there's family violence associated, severe mental health problems. And if we reduce the way that gambling is available and the way that gambling companies are allowed to do business, we'll fix some of that.
Do you get the sense that the federal government has an appetite for that, for further change or further reform?
I think there are members of the parliament that do. I'm not sure about the Prime Minister. He's refused to meet with us so far. And I don't think there's not a balanced conversation without listening to the people with lived experience. It's one-sided otherwise.
And I really appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nikolai.
Anna Bardsley, who's co-founder of the not-for-profit group Gambling Harm Lived Experience Experts. A number of texts coming through on this, 0467 922 891. Ted says gambling was illegal once for a good reason. Maybe now we're seeing the reason why. Haley has another idea, saying that concerns about internet gambling, that could be a gateway for young people.